Hey parents, I've had a ton of questions lately, and we're just going to get right down to it. Antibiotics. We're talking the misuse, the overuse, short term side effects, but more importantly, the long term side effects of antibiotics in kids. Here's the truth: when used appropriately, like any medical intervention should be, antibiotics are an amazing thing and they save lives. But even when used appropriately, we see a lot of the same long term side effects as when they are misused or overused. And let me tell you, the misuse and overuse happens way too often. There are 20 plus years of research out there showing that antibiotics are destroying our kids' gut biomes and messing with their nervous system, and this has been going on for way too long. The fact of the matter is that until we start looking at taking care of our children from a health care perspective instead of a sick care perspective, this is just going to keep perpetuating and going on and on. Health itself is not necessarily just the absence of sickness. And we don't get sick because of a lack of medications or antibiotics that are floating around in our system, because there are plenty of healthy children out there that aren't doing multiple rounds of antibiotics, that aren't constantly sick, that aren't experiencing that tradition and going from one thing to another, to another, to another. Their parents have not subscribed to the idea that they'll just grow out of their ear infections or they'll stop being sick when they're a little bit older. And by taking the ball out of that sick care court and putting it into looking at making sure that their child's nervous system and their immune system and digestive system function well together through communication and making sure that they can work as they're supposed to, many of these families are finding what true healthcare really is. So today we're going to hit the ins and the outs on how to get on the right path to rebuild your child's gut and immune systems, help their nervous system to function like it should, and give you the confidence you need to move forward on the path that you feel in your own gut is the right way. It seems like every day I take a case history of an older child who's had too many rounds of antibiotics as an infant or a young child, or we begin care with another infant whose nervous system, gut system, and immune system development are all just in disarray and a wreck and an absolute mess due to antibiotics. Like I said before, there's 2 decades of research out there, and it is crystal clear. But antibiotics are continually overused for ear and respiratory infections. And the short-term side effects are no good, but the long-term side effects are a bigger problem. So mom, dad, if you are faced with the difficult decision of giving your child another round of antibiotics, or you're just done with it, if you're looking for a different option, a way for your child to naturally heal as they should, and if you're looking for natural options and solutions that your children can have for their ear and respiratory infections instead of antibiotics and other medications, this is for you guys. Our goal today is to talk about the long-term side effects of antibiotics, including the development of antibiotic resistance, chronic health conditions, and autoimmune disorders. And the disruption of the microbiome, we're going to talk about that too. So if you got a kid and they got some crud, if you know any other parents in this situation, please share, get this word out. We know this is helpful. Sometimes it can be hard when we're going through putting these together, coming up with the right story for the situation, the right case, the right child, because when you help as many kids as we do, there's just so many to pick from. The first thing that came to mind was a little boy I took care of named Sammy. Sammy was a hilarious little guy, smiled, he could light up a room. Problem was he was sick all the time. And his parents had exhausted the path of going through rounds of antibiotics, and they'd really put off doing tubes in his ears. And you could tell, just looking at Sammy, that he was in distress. He was having a rough time. Sammy's mom, like so many other parents that had gotten her information from another group on Facebook, because we'd helped that parent's kids out too. When she came in immediately, she said, I want to kick this sick. I want to get this going. We don't want to be hitting another round of antibiotics. I don't really want to put tubes in this little boy's ears. What can we do? And to take a look at Sammy and his history of having rounds of antibiotics, an inhaler, he didn't really like to go outside and play sports because he's allergic to everything. You got to break it down and look at what's going on in that system. And the heartbreaking thing, poor Sam would go outside, he'd go outside to play, and whether it was due to allergies or his asthma acting up, he would feel his airway close, he would panic, and he would go into this fight or flight, distress situation. And it was just really hard to see a 5-year-old kid completely melting down from the inside out. One of the first things that his parents had said, the first time the antibiotics worked pretty good, but they seemed to not be as effective each subsequent time they were prescribed. When I asked how many times they were prescribed, they almost couldn't count. That's how many. And it's always a good opportunity to sit down and have a face-to-face conversation with parents about what truly their goals are for their kids and help them understand a little bit more about the anatomy of the situation, what's going on with an ear infection. The wild thing is we have drainage for our ears, our eustachian tubes, as adults come in at a downward angle. But kids, their eustachian tubes are a little bit more horizontal. So there's a lot more ability for fluid to get trapped in there in that middle part of the ear. If we couple that with as basic as we can get in the world of chiropractic and looking at misalignment of the upper part of the cervical spine where our neck attaches to our head, a little bit of rotation or misalignment there is going to cause more pressure on the soft tissue, which is then going to reduce the effectiveness of the drainage of that eustachian tube. Bang, bang, boom. We don't even have to start talking about the nervous system here. This is just straight up occlusion. Now, the important part about the nervous system is when we have that occlusion, there's going to be a whole bunch of other stuff going on. And especially at that upper part of the nervous system, we know if that part where the head and the neck come together, if we have a bony misalignment there, pressure on the vagus nerve is going to cause irritation throughout our digestive and immune systems, and then it's going to ripple through our entire body. Now, in addition to some supportive things that we showed mom and dad with a little bit of eustachian tube massage and some warm compress, adjusting little Sammy had a very quick effect in reducing the pain in his ear from the ear infection. But more importantly, it helped with the drainage, that plumbing, to help empty out that middle ear, to drain things out so things didn't get stuck and stagnant in there. This is one of those situations that it's always amazing to see. We started off with, hey, I heard chiropractic can help with my kids' ear infections. What do we got? And by the time Sammy had finished his restoration plan, he was not so dependent on his inhaler. He was happy to be outside. His allergies weren't kicking him in the butt as bad as they were. And his mom looked at me one day and said, "You know what? You did it. I don't know how you did it, but you kicked the sick." That's what we do. So when we look at taking on these cases, the first thing we look to do is to empower and educate our parents to be strong advocates for their children's health, especially when it comes to understanding that antibiotics are not always necessarily or effective in treating certain infections such as viral illnesses or mild ear infections. Plus, the overuse or inappropriate use of antibiotics over time can lead to the development of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which can be difficult or impossible to treat in the future. Now, the main things that antibiotics disrupt when we're talking about wrecking kids' long-term health are the following. Antibiotics can weaken and suppress their immune systems. Antibiotics disrupt their microbiome. Antibiotics disrupt the effectiveness of neurotransmitters and gut-brain communication. And that last one, antibiotics help develop antibiotic resistance. Again, not knocking antibiotics as a whole because there are situations where they are life-saving and it is absolutely an amazing thing that we have developed them. But where I have beef is when we're talking about the real root problem of things. When we're using antibiotics for ear and respiratory infections, they don't necessarily address the cause. What's the cause, you say? Well, you ever get a clog in your toilet? Poor plumbing. That clog backs things up. It's hard to drain it out. That's how our ears work too. That eustachian tube should drain that fluid that's being stuck in that stagnant toilet water that we definitely don't want. Well, how do you think that feels in your child's ear? This bad drainage, coupled with an imbalance of the neuroimmune system, is that perfect storm coming together that makes this problem. Where does this poor drainage and altered neuroimmune function in kids come from? Glad you asked. Generally, we're talking about birth trauma. We're talking about C-sections, forceps, vacuum extractions, tough births, long labors, posterior babies, breech babies, transverse babies, all of these things that are putting immense stress and tension on the upper part of the nervous system where the neck and the head connect from a compressive force, or if we're talking about a C-section or a extractive force, then pulling. So we've first got compression, then we've got distraction, we've got all this force going on. And I always go back to it. You hand somebody your brand new, perfect newborn baby, and the first thing you tell them if they're going to hold it is support the head. Well, in some of these tough births, that sweet little baby head neck becomes the lever to get baby out. And we're working against the clock, but it's important to understand that this is where some of the first insult to the nervous system comes from. Now, I implore you, do your own research. There's a lot of information out there linking C-sections together with long-term respiratory illness and autoimmune challenges later in life in kids. So not only are we talking about a disrupted biome from antibiotics, if we're already starting with a nervous system that has been insulted, injured, interfered with, subluxated from birth, then we know that that fixation in the upper part of the cervical spine, which is in the wrong position, which is occluding the soft tissue, which is putting pressure on the eustachian tube, is both going to irritate the nervous system, that vagus nerve, digestive immune, parasympathetic nervous system, and just physically, it's going to occlude the way that that tube can drain. So, moms, dads, if you have a little one and you are trying to kick that sick, then you need to find yourself a neurologically focused pediatric chiropractor. Our foremost priority is to get to the root cause of what is causing your child's ear infections and that sickness and figure out how we gonna kick it for you. Our goal is to provide a natural and drug-free solution for families so they don't have to resort to, first off, hidden antibiotics, tubes in the ears, respiratory inhaler, over time. So if this resonates with you, if this is a struggle that you've been experiencing, let us know. You can hop on our website. You can sign up for a 15-minute phone consult. It's completely free of charge just to get an understanding of how we can help. If you're ready to jump to the front of the line, give us a call. Check out our website, synergychiroflorida.com. Send us a message on Facebook. Get a hold of us. We'll find the best time possible to help you and your kid. Here to help kids, here to help you, here to help your family. Can't wait to meet you. Can't wait to see you. I'll talk to you soon.